forward with this motion, we're going to do that, but I would suggest that we take his recommendation of hiring an appraiser and get the DMV out of that location and begin to completely separate it and give them their space that they need to appraise properly so we can get the valuations that we need with everything going on and have the DMV function properly the way that it needs to. And look and see where we can put that, and maybe we put a date on there so it doesn't just continue to drag out.
Well, I think, and I would think a motion that we perhaps investigate possibility of putting it somewhere else. We might find that the most economic places to modify and leave it where it is. I understand the need for possibly different entrance, so there's not intermingling of employees, separating that off. But anyway.
Let's look into it and see and talk to the driver's license division.
In the essence of time, I'll make the motion, we go ahead and take the recommendation given to us by the tax commission, the property tax division, the property tax, and take it under advisement and try to get something in place that relates to DMV and the new appraiser online by the 15th of September.
So you're authorizing to go ahead and start advertising for a new...
Well, I think we have somebody on the roster now, do we not? We sent out a roster, we had 2 employees on, 2 people on it. We hired one.
Prior?
Yeah.
From the last
Yeah.
week? Okay.
And I think I'd do that other than send out another advertisement.
That person might still be available.
Yes.
So the motion then is, does everybody understand the motion, that authorize the additional appraiser and to investigate the potential of moving the DMV?
And then report back on by September 15th.
You want 15th is the third meeting. 15th will be a work meeting.
Well, the 13th is a work meeting. I would say the 13th.
I guess it can be reported in a work meeting.
Yeah, then we can move it to the third meeting for a vote.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer was.
All right, my second still stands.
Okay, everybody clear on the motion? Okay, we will go ahead and vote. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
As I sit down, could I just introduce you to our county rep assigned to Wasatch County? This is Scott Paulson. He has stolen away from Summit County.
So we stole him away from the Davis County Voting Department.
Oh, that too. That's right. He went there. So you're welcome to call him anytime, night or day, middle of the night, whenever you have heartburn. He is here to serve you, so.
You don't like to call me anymore?
You're welcome to call me too. I'll give you Scott's number when you call me.
We appreciate your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Okay, next item, I guess we can decide. Let's go ahead with item number 2. If Representative Morrison and company doesn't mind waiting a minute longer, where are you at? Where's the, there we go, are you okay?
Sure.
He's billing us. What does he care?
Thank you.
No, that Councilman Good is leaving. Did you, Mr. Tat, did you catch when Mr.
I heard one.
Okay, so discussion, consideration of proposed tax increase for Wasatch County Fire District and approval to start the process. So, okay, the other part we've already passed in front of you. So any discussion on this, we talked about it prior to what the intent is on the, this is on the tax increase. I guess we don't need to, in the fire board motion, we set a range of potential tax increase. Do we need to set that, or can we pass this still within that range? What's your thoughts, council?
We just need to ratify or approve the motion. Let's just make the same motion.
To start the process. I think you made that motion. You want to make it again?
I made the entire board that we go ahead with the process and move forward with this proposed tax increase between $750,000 to $1,000,000
1.5 million.
1.5 million, and to continue researching it and with information that we report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Brad, I guess you're aware of what the dates would be, and
So we have to send out notices with tax bills, set up some hearing dates.
maybe if you could prepare, just request maybe a page that you prepare the schedule, if you want to present that at the next meeting or
Sure,
whatever,
we'll
so
do
we're
that.
aware what that process is,
Very good.
public hearings and whatever's entailed with that.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? See none, we'll vote yes.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
That's what I do.
All right. Item number 3, Larson and Company, accounting firm will present the results of the 2016 financial audit. What did these tell you?
Yeah.
You can introduce yourself. I don't know.
9.
Yeah, you were just trying to put it off as long as you could.
So you know.
Right. I'm John Hatterty. Like Councilman Crittenden said, I'm from Larson Company, and we had the privilege of coming up and working with the county and doing a financial statement audit. And I'll shorten my formal speech, unless you want to have a nap right now. And just kind of, I'll just kind of go over briefly our auditor's report and then a couple of the other reports that we're required to issue. Not a lot changed in regards to those this year. But then I want to talk about a couple of things that changed significantly in the financial statements that affect the financial statements of the county. If you want to turn to page 1 in the bound copy, this is our independent auditor's report. This is a report that we're required to issue with every audit that we perform. Just reiterates that these are the county's financial statements and they're your responsibility, and that you're responsible to know what accounting principles are and how to do a proper accounting. And then our responsibility is to express an opinion on your financial statements. So we take the financial statements that the auditor's office gives us, and we look at all the balances and we break them down into specific accounts and specific transactions if need to be, and test those either by internal testing or by third-party confirmations, and then make sure that we're comfortable with the balances so that we're making sure that you're reporting accurately your financial position. The bottom paragraph of that page is our opinion, and it's an unqualified or an unmodified opinion, which is a good opinion in the accounting world. The second page required supplementary information. The management's discussion and analysis that immediately follows this report. And then there's some pension information on the retirement systems and the modified approach, which is your road infrastructure. That's required to be with the financial statements, although it's not a part of the financial statements. So we don't actually issue an opinion on those sections. Just to clarify that, we do go through all of the numbers and make sure that they tie back to the financial statements, but we can't actually issue an opinion on those sections. And the rest of the information just talks about supplementary information, which would be the non-major funds. They're all presented separately, and we do give an opinion on those in as much as they relate to the financial statements. And I'll kind of explain that so you understand that a little bit. And then the single audit, every year you have the federal single audit because of the grant expenditures that you have in excess of $750,000. So with that, if you want to flip back to page 54. The next report that we're required to issue is from the government auditing standards, and we're now required to look at your internal controls. Not to give an opinion on them, but to form our audit and make sure that there are controls that are operating. One of the things you're talking about is separating, different responsibilities and duties. And in our financial world as an auditor, that's one thing that we look at is there a separation of who's performing what functions? Because if any one person is performing multiple responsibilities in one process, that gives them the opportunity to commit fraud. And you're well aware of that. So we look at the internal controls and make sure that there's nothing significantly wrong that would make your financial statements misstated. Okay, page 58 is the report that we're required to issue from the state auditor. And those areas in the columns are the areas that we're required to look at this year. And once again, it's management's responsibility to know what the rules are, know what state code says, and be in compliance. And then our responsibility is to test those areas and make sure that, in fact, you are in compliance. There were a couple of findings that we'll talk about. Let's see. And then the last report is just a single audit report, and it's just kind of a reiteration that we look at your compliance over the federal awards and also your internal controls. Not much to talk about there, just because it's kind of repetitive. So if you want to, we'll hurry and go over the findings, because that's probably more interesting to you guys, and then talk about a little bit of the financial statements. So if you just open up the stapled together packet, these are things that we're required to communicate to you. There weren't any new accounting pronouncements that were adopted, and there weren't any changes that you made during the year. There were no difficulties in performing the audit. There were no corrected and uncorrected misstatements. There weren't any disagreements with management. Consultations with other accountants. This just basically states that if there's a question that arises and we have a disagreement with management, they're more than welcome to go out and talk to another independent auditor. And the only requirement is that we also have access to that other third party, and that all three of us can get on the same page so we can proceed with the audit and issue an opinion. All right, so if you want to flip to the findings. So this year, the findings, the first one is an internal control finding. Basically, one of the tests that we do is we look at your cash disbursement, so we select a sample just to verify that there's not anything weird going on, and that there's actually documentation, there's invoices, there's POs, there's proper department approval, there's proper council approval on all the disbursements. And one check out of the 60 that we tested didn't have proper documentation to back it up. It's not really a significant issue, but if you project that out and say, well, if one out of every 60 is missing documentation, if you have 6,000, then all of a sudden you have 100 or 150 that are missing documentation, it could potentially be a problem. The amount was immaterial and it was insignificant, and it was just an oversight. So, our recommendation to the office was just make sure that that documentation is properly kept and stapled to a copy of the check.
Were they able to find the documentation?
Yeah.
Attach it,
Yep.
just they hadn't put it
Yep.
together.
Yep.
So it wasn't missing documentation, it
Correct.
wasn't together like it should have been.
Yep.
Okay.
And really what you want to do is, if any of you guys want to walk into the auditor's office and you're questioning an expense, you want to have a backup right there. You don't want to have, well, I don't know, we'll have to hurry and find it, because then all of a sudden it's like, well, and one of the things that we look at is, if it was a recurring problem where there was missing documentation, and then, maybe 1, 2, 3 days later, all of a sudden all the documentation appears, in an auditor's world, that sometimes will see, represent, well, maybe they're going and creating the documentation for something that's going on. That obviously, we don't think that happened. I mean, in this instant, but that's one thing that we look at is, that's why we like to see the documentation attached to a copy of the disbursement check. So the compliance findings this year there were a few funds or departments that were over budget, and they were the public safety, the parks and recreation, and municipal services. And as I worked with Brent and Barry on this, a lot of it has to do with year-end accruals. And I've worked with Barry a lot this year, and what Barry has tried to do is maybe is a little OCD, and I understand it because I'm the same way, but he tried really hard to budget exactly what needed to be budgeted for, trying to anticipate, but inevitably, you're always gonna have issues where we accrue back invoices that, you know, really should be in the proper year, and then all of a sudden you're over budget. And so what we've talked to Barry about is, you know, make sure you give yourself a little wiggle room, you know, because a budget is a budget. And, you know, you can budget the moon if you wanted to. That doesn't mean that you need to spend that money, or somehow you're gonna be held accountable because you budgeted. So just make sure that you have enough budget to cover any unanticipated things that are gonna come in at the end of the year. I don't know, Barry, do you have anything else to say on that?
Well, it was really the way we amended. So we did amend, and I think what you were saying is we kind of tried to amend right to the dollar to end the year. And then we had a couple of unexpected things at year end, or our estimates weren't exact. And so I think you're saying, you know, just cushion that a little bit towards year end, and then the accruals, when they come in, then we'll be fine. So we did amend, it was just kind of how much or how we amended.
And, you know, on a budget is just that, it's a budget and it's an estimate. So, you know, estimate a little bit high just to make sure that, you don't have an issue. All right, and then the last one. So every year, twice a year, the Treasurer's Office is required to submit a report to the Utah Money Management Act Council. And basically it lists all of your bank accounts and what those balances are. And the December report had a couple of accounts that actually belonged to some of the component units. And so he was unaware that they were also reporting that same balance on their report, and that he didn't need to. And so when we kind of let him know, he corrected the report and resubmitted it. But it was still had to be a finding just because the original report wasn't in compliance with what needed to happen. So basically, the report should match exactly what's in the county's bank accounts. And what they're trying to do is see how much, what your bank account balances are, what your investment, how you're managing your money, basically. All right, last year's findings, submission of the financial statements. I decided not to include this year, and this is one thing that I want to bring up, is it's really a struggle with the amount of component units that are involved in the county. And it's one thing that we've waited on and waited on and waited on. And some years it's been, clear into October, November, and then the state's getting on the county because, where's your financial statements? And, well, we're still waiting for this component unit and this component unit. It's getting better. It's not perfect yet, but Brent and Barry have been really good about hounding those component units. And part of the problem that I'm still seeing is they'll delay issuing their financial statements, and then when we get them, their report date on the financial statements is the end of May or the first part of June. Well, if that's the audit date, then why aren't we getting the financial statements? And so it's just one thing that we need to communicate to them is if this is when you're going to date your audit report, we need to get it.
Are you saying the date on it was within compliance?
Mm-hmm.
The time you got it, it was out?
But yeah, the time that we got it was...
That was what opponents we're talking about.
Yeah, this year, which ones were we waiting on? The Heber Valleys, both Heber Valleys. And both of their issue dates, one was June 30th and one was the 1st of June. Jordanelle, Timberlakes, we didn't get those until
They were
close to June 30th or the first week of July, but their dates were July. In fact, I can tell you exactly what dates they put.
And when do they do to the state?
Everything is due June 30th. So even your financial statements are due June 30th to the state. But the problem is, and what I've been trying to get the state auditor's office to do is every component unit ought to have theirs due May 30th. Because then that gives us time. The problem is we get all the component units at one time, and they've been so integrated into your financial statements that if we get them on June 30th, there's not even enough time to put all that information in and get your financial statements corrected, and then yours are late. And so
The state law says they have to have it done by June 30th.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What's the state auditor's response to that request?
There's been so much turnover at the state auditors that Van's really the only one that I can talk to now, and he likes that, and they're trying to get legislation to have them do that. because he agrees with this problem. And, you know, and I've talked to him about, you know, Wasatch County and San Juan County, because they're in the same boat, and they understand why your financial statements are late. That's why they're not hounding you July 10th for, hey, where's your financial statements? And so,
There's a piece of legislation for you to run, sir. Or not.
or not. So, you know, it looks like, so Heber Valley is one of the ones that we were waiting on. They dated theirs June 16th. Timber Lakes was May 17th. Jordan now dated theirs June 16th. You know, Twin Creeks, May 30th. The other ones were, Heber Valley was June 30th. So, you know, they're June dates that they're issuing their reports, but yet, you know, they aren't actually giving them out until, you know, I think we dated, yours is July 26th, and July 26th you had your financial statement submitted to the state. So it should be that, you know, whatever the issue date is, that's when they should be able to be issued. So just a concern, and I know Brent and Barry are you know, very well involved in that, and they've been very good about, you know, getting a hold of those districts and pushing them to get their financial statements done. But, you know, sometimes it's really out of the county's control. The other finding last year was just fund balance limitations. Just know that, you know, your general fund balance has a limitation to it, and that wasn't an issue this year. So that's good that it was corrected. Just one other thing that I was going to talk to you about, your financial statements. If you want to turn to page 33 in the packet. So one of the things that I started to realize as I was getting component units reports and I was reviewing the audit reports was there was a lot of misrepresentations on who was a component unit and how they were being treated by themselves and by the county. And there was a lot of discrepancies of whether or not they were a component unit, whether they were blended or whether they were discretely presented. Blended meaning like the solid waste district is its own district, but it's so intertwined with the county that it becomes a part of the county's financial statements. Whereas discretely it is presented separately from the county's financial statements. They're still presented in here, as you can see on page 34 and 35. But it all boils down to what's the governing structure? Are they a legally separate entity? What's the liability, both legal liability, you know, if something happens at Jordan Mill, is Wasatch County legally going to be liable for what happens there? There's debt liability. If they default on their debt, does that fall back to Wasatch County? And so we go through a process of questions on the relationship from the county to each component unit. And a lot of the reports that were coming in were saying that they're discrete component units, meaning they should be a part of the county's financial statements. And so what I did with Brent and Barry was we went through each one individually and came up with our answers of, okay, whether they're a component unit, yes or no. Okay, if they are they blended or are they discrete? And then we reached out to each of the component units and said, look, there's a discrepancy. You're reporting that you're a discrete component unit or a blended component unit when in reality you're not even a component unit. Or you're saying you're blended, that you're so much a part of the county that they're responsible for everything when you're not really. And so we finally got everybody on the same page, which is good for the county because of the liability issues. And you know, we even had input from Mike. I know Barry solicited input from Mike on, you know, okay, what's the liability issues here? How involved really are they? So what happened was we moved a lot of what used to be blended component units, we took them out of the financial statements of the county. So instead of going back in time, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago and restating every financial statement from then clear up to the present date, we just do one prior period adjustment that basically takes it out of your equity and says, this shouldn't have happened in the past, we're going to make it correct. And so you can see the ones that we took out were the fire district, Twin Creeks, North Village, Brighton Estates, Strawberry, and then Wasatch County Service Area number 1. And so what happened was the equity of the county decreased by $705,000 in governmental funds and $82 million in the proprietary funds. So what does that equity mean? Well, it's all of the assets of those districts and all of the liabilities of that district. That's the net difference. So that just got moved out of the county's financial statements. The effect on the county, well, nothing really. I mean, your fund balance isn't as high in your proprietary funds, but you also aren't burdened by, all of the liabilities and obligations of those component units. So, long story short, now all of those districts are reporting in consensus with what the county's reporting as far as are they blended or are they discrete, or in the case of service area number 1, it's not even a component unit by their operations and the way they're set up. So, other than that issue, it was great working with Barry and Brent. They do a good job. The records are clean, and Barry's, he's working really hard at keeping up to date and making the adjustments that need to be done. It's a pleasure actually to come in and work with the county. So congratulate those guys, or commend those guys every time you get a chance, because they do a good job.
My question is,
Yeah.
for all the years that we've had this, why is this the first year we determined it was a component? I mean, we never treated these as component units in-house.
Question, if they were component units, like when we do budget process in December, we vote on the library budget separate. Is that because it's a component unit?
Actually, they are part of our budget because they're
not listed here, so.
the library and the health department are actually their special funds, so they're part of our funding anyway.
Well, we kind of do the solid waste.
The issue comes, and I think you explained it, but the issue comes when we do our financials, and when the district, whatever district goes and does their financial, those districts were doing them differently, claiming a different status than the county has always claimed.
And that's what we've been trying to do.
And so that made it.
So now back to your questions.
We tried to fix that with the comptroller a few years ago, but we couldn't get districts to go along, and so we finally just said, you know what, take them out, please.
So part of the reason why it came into light this year is that's something that we kind of look at every year, and then all of a sudden the districts started changing the way, or reporting different, that hey, we're a blended component unit, and we're saying, well, wait a minute, and really they've been a part of the financial statements, and it's just carried over year, and finally I just said, you know what, Barry, we have to sit down and discuss this, because I don't think this is correct. There's no way all of these guys are blended component units. So.
Well, it sounds like, Barry and Brent, we appreciate your work, and we appreciate your work. It sounds like you've really straightened up some stuff that we've been trying to get done.
Yeah, and it's going to simplify the financial statements for the county to make more sense to you guys, not having all of that information involved in the.
Well, it'll make them be able to do their work cleaner too, probably more.
Yeah, I mean, really, they're still going to have their financial statements. It's just now all of that data is not going to be funneled into your data. So it's more of what you see here is all of the county's responsibility.